Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly Potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. It's always presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. We got a ton of stuff to get to. If you missed our draft recap podcast, that's up and running. I know it's done pretty well. It sounded like Rick, and we were really happy to get that done on Sunday. So again, we may get into some draft talk here. I'm not so sure, but we got a lot of draft talk covered in that last podcast.
Yeah, we're going to start it off to just sort of recap the draft a little bit here, but a little bit more big picture compared to what we did this past weekend on Sunday after the draft finished up. If you missed that, you can find it on this podcast feed or on YouTube. But Skinny, the Bengals draft haul helped them move from number 13 to number 8 in the latest NFL power rankings done by Fox Sports. David Hellman, the guy who did this write-up, said, quote, "The Bengals will be better in 2024 for no other reason than having a healthy Joe Burrow. If their $55 million quarterback is fully recovered from his wrist injury, Cincinnati is a contender. But in addition, I love the way they addressed the offensive line, added talent to the receiver core, and improved at safety. Don't forget about the Bengals. The Ravens were in 7th. They were the only AFC North team ranked ahead of the Bengals in these power rankings. The Browns came in at 10th. The Steelers came in at 19th. So, Skinny, I guess the question here is, do you feel it's reasonable to think that the Bengals have jumped 5 spots in NFL power rankings after the draft?
I do, to the points that were made. I think it's both technically post-draft, I guess, and also what you kind of did in free agency a little bit. I mean, this roster is better on paper right now than it was last year at this time ago, and that included Joe Burrow on the roster at this point. But to his point, getting healthy Joe Burrow back is a big part of it. But, yeah, I think they are better on the right side of the offensive line. I think they are better at defensive tackle. And that's not to besmirch DJ Reader. You also got younger at defensive tackle. I do think they're going to add a veteran cornerback here at some point as well for depth purposes. You've improved your safety room by leaps and bounds to the point where you moved one of the safeties to corner this offseason in Dax Hill. So, yeah, I think this roster is significantly better, and that's probably about right in the rankings, in my opinion.
One of the other interesting things that came out from a national write-up perspective was kind of the juxtaposition of people looking at the Amarius Mims pick with the first-round pick, number 18 overall. The Bengals selected the offensive tackle out of Georgia. And on one hand, you've got Pro Football Focus, Trevor Sikkema. He shared his favorite 2024 NFL draft picks from all 32 NFL teams. And when it came to the Bengals, he went with Mims, saying, "The Bengals made this a tough decision with 3 excellent picks in the first 3 rounds, but Mims has the highest return on investment and is in the perfect spot now. The only real knock on Mims was that he didn't have a ton of in-game experience in his 3-year college career, but his potential remains sky high. In Cincinnati, he doesn't have to start right away. In year 2 and beyond, he could set himself on a path to being an all-pro." But then on the other side of that, you have Sports Illustrated and Matt Verderam, who shared his most likely bust from the draft. He listed Amarius Mims at number 3 on his list of biggest bust potential, saying Mims might be the biggest wild card in this class. On tape, he's an absolute monster in both the run and pass game, dominating edge defenders with considerable ease. Also at 6'8" and 340 pounds, the size is unquestionable. However, Mims started only 8 games in college, and injuries were a consistent concern too. The Bengals are banking on him finally staying healthy and reaching his potential, which is becoming an all-pro talent. For Cincinnati, which has struggled to field a quality offensive line in front of Joe Burrow, it's an understandable risk. Skinny, we're seeing people come out on both sides of this pick. Ultimately, where do you fall closer towards?
Yeah, I mean, everybody says the inexperienced part is 1,000% accurate. It's a fact. He only played 8 games. You know what else seems to be a fact from all considered, including that dude? That he played damn well on tape on the 8 games that you saw. That's the part. That's the biggest takeaway for me. If it had been iffy, or he played a good game here and a game there and a okay game here and then a great game. No, I mean, it's universal that tape popped for everybody, including the Bengals. And as I mentioned, I asked Mike Potts, the director of scouting, the week before the draft about, would you rather have guys with more games under their belt, or is there enough tape on a guy who, didn't play a whole lot? I didn't mention Mims by name, but I said he knew who I was talking about. And he said, sure, you'd rather have the more tape. There's no doubt. But if the tape that you have is excellent, you can't ignore that fact either. And I think that's the part that people have to get over, is this lack of experience part. I'll give you the injury risk a little bit because he did have a tightrope procedure done in his ankle, and that's nothing to sneeze at. That's the same procedure that Sam Hubbard had done in his as well. So,
which by the way, we talked about that last week with Sam Hubbard. I've never heard of this procedure.
I had never heard of it either.
Sam Hubbard, and now we have 2 players on the same team with it. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it?
And tightrope is either, I can't remember if it's either copyrighted or trademarked, one or the other. It's like like Kleenex or Frisbee or one of those.
Is that new? Is it a new thing?
It must be. It's like I think it's a polyurethane cord of some kind that connects some stuff. I'd never heard of it either. In fact, as I mentioned, we all, as reporters, when Sam Hubbard showed us the scar, in his ankle and said that he had deltoid surgery, and we're like, wait a minute, that's in your back. I found out that the deltoid's actually a ligament down in your ankle as well. And then I read up about the tightrope. I'd never heard of the tightrope procedure before, but I guess it must be something new, and maybe it's something new that's effective and is long lasting and all of those good things. So I do get that. I get the injury risk a little, but I mean, for the most part, he didn't get on the field his first year at Georgia because he's playing with some of the best players in college football. And again, this was a high-level recruit coming out of high school, a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, who once he finally got his chance to crack the lineup, stood out. Everything screams ascending talent. So yeah, I lean towards the perfect pick. And if somehow he comes in and he doesn't get into his playbook and he looks out of place, well, you're going to know pretty fast, and then you're going to have to do something about that moving forward. But you've also got the fallback plan in Trent Brown, and that's why you signed Trent Brown, to take this draft pick, an ascending talent, and ease him into the NFL.
So I think there are, like, you have done a good job of laying this out as you just did. I've listened to some of the other local media guys in town who have done a good job of explaining why this pick makes sense, why it's maybe not as big of a risk. Or I think one thing that's been happening is Mims has been labeled a project by a lot of people. And I think that term is a little bit ambiguous. Some people are viewing this as a guy with like no experience, who hasn't really done much, who just has measurables. And other people are saying what you just said, which is like, actually, everything he's put on tape is super impressive. Like, he looks like a dominant player. It's really just the matter of he didn't get on the field as much earlier in his career, and then he got hurt this year when he was going to be the full-time starter. And so that's kind of the part of it that leads to some question marks and to us not having as much polished tape of this guy to go off of. But it's not necessarily as much that he is a full-blown project. Is that fair to say? Like, he doesn't have any polish to his game. Yeah, no, I think it's just a guy that needs reps at the NFL level, like all these guys. And listen, I get some of the angst because you're in win now mode, right? This is win now mode. And this isn't a guy that immediately helps you. He could. I mean, he may have to be thrown in the lineup in week 4 if Trent Brown gets hurt. And the history of Trent Brown is going to get hurt. I mean, it just is what it is. Could have taken the wide receiver right behind him because Brian Thomas was still on the board. I said this on our Bengals podcast. Do we know what the Bengals had Brian Thomas graded? Was he graded high? Did they say, no, there's more receivers that we like better later in the draft than him? And then, well, the Steelers took a more polished tackle. Well, the Steelers needed to take a polished tackle. They needed to take a finished product. The Bengals didn't. And that doesn't mean Mims can't play and might not come into camp and pop to the point where they go, sooner rather than later, he's going to start and Trent Brown's going to be the backup. And we don't know Trent Brown anything, just got him for a year. So I'm super interested to see how it plays out, but I just have a hard time knocking the pick. And I think that's fair. And then back to my point, I think the media people have done a good job of explaining that side of it. But I do get a little frustrated when we come out on the side of it, like, fans are stupid for being worried about this pick, or like it's an insane thing to be a little bit concerned when the Bengals feel like they're doing something a little bit smarter than everybody else. When they're going after the guy with a little bit less tape, or who hasn't had a lot of starts in his career yet, and he has all the measurables. I mean, the Bengals, especially recent history of drafting offensive linemen, there are plenty of big swings and misses early in the draft to point to and be like, these guys aren't great doing this. So, I mean, on one hand, I completely am fine with the pick, and I get the explanations that you have given and others have given. On the other side, the like acting like fans are idiots because they're concerned by this is unreasonable too. I think it's very understandable to be concerned and think there are question marks about this.
Understood, and that part is fair. The one thing is, this isn't as big of a swing as maybe people think it is. I mean, he was a
Cedric Ogbuehi, and I think that's important to point out.
Yeah, but Cedric Ogbuehi even was graded as a first-round talent that year. He just had a knee issue and then just never played up to that grade. I mean, also, Mims was graded as the 5th best offensive tackle from Dane Brugler. He was a first-round grade from Brugler. He was a first-round grade from NFL.com. I mean, so it's not like they went way off the board to take this cat. I mean, he did have a first-round grade, and he was among that group of tackles that you expected to come off the board in the first round. So, again, I get the swing because of the lack of experience. But I don't think it's such a swing that they went, hey, we tried to be the smartest guy in the room and take a second-round guy because of the measurables and all that. No, they took a first-round grade.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think anyone looked at him as he wasn't a first-rounder. But, there's levels to first round picks, right? Like the John Ross pick. It's like, obviously he was a first rounder because he was the fastest guy in the draft, but then you find out, well, there's a reason he was at Washington and he put up some weird numbers and things like that. So I think there's interesting points to be made on both sides of this. And ultimately a lot of this draft is going to be predicated on, or looked back upon, how did they do with this first round pick and Amarius Mims, which, we talked about Trevor Sigma from PFF, who said that Mims was his favorite pick of the draft for the Bengals. Who was your favorite pick by the Bengals?
Jermaine Burton. I just think he's got a chance to listen. This is going to sound like I'm crapping all over Tyler Boyd, and I don't mean it to be. He was a really good, solid pro, reliable guy who, simply put, has lost a step. It's why he's kind of still on the market. Although it sounds like the Chargers have some interest in him at the moment. It's why he's still on the market. I mean, he's going to be reliable for you, but he's not a big look. You got a chance to put 3 big play receivers on the field at the same time in Burton, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. They said at the Dan Pitcher said at the combine that his charge this year is to find a way to create more explosive plays. It's why they went and signed Zach Moss at the running back spot. They have a big play potential guy in Chase Brown now as the other running back spot. You've got 3 potential game breakers on the field. They want to play Jamar Chase in the slot more. Burton can slide outside. It also gives you a chance to, Charlie Jones has some big play potential. Andre Yoshavash has some big play potential. That wide receiver room has got big play potential galore. And so I just think that you've gotten younger, faster, more explosive with that pick. I know there's the red flags with the incident involving the girl at Tennessee who came on the field and he allegedly slapped her. He addressed that. I thought he was contrite about it.
Which, by the way, the just was kind of funny when he said, like, 2 weeks later, we had a similar incident.
And I got him.
So I learned from it. So that was a great explanation.
He did learn from it, but I will say this. I mean, there's no place for what he did, but I am so sick of this running onto the court, running onto the field, and we certainly saw some incidents that happened to players.
Fair enough. I don't think anyone's going to give a pass for punching a woman over that.
No. I said there's no place for it at all. I'm just saying, if we stop this stuff, you don't get to any kind of confrontation. And that's where I think we're at that. And that, especially that was a crazy wild finish, a crazy wild game, super emotional. He doesn't deserve a pass for it, but I'm going to let Nick Saban deal with whatever punishment he gave him. And whatever it was. And I guess Nick didn't think it was enough to keep him out of playing. And maybe that says a lot about Nick Saban. I don't know. But at the end of the day, if that's the red flag, and that's the thing, he sat, I think we talked about this on Sunday. He sat with us in a very informal setting on Saturday. And he was asked about, do you want to comment any more about the red flags? He said, I don't know where the flags are coming from. He said, yeah, I had the incident, but I don't know where the rest of this is coming from. And that to me is one of those that's like the game of telephone, right? One guy says something about a guy and it spreads like wildfire, and suddenly there's red flags. Again, that might have pushed him to where the Bengals were able to select him. I just think he has a chance in that wide receiver room to learn. He's got a great coach to learn from in Troy Walters, and the potential for the guy is just off the charts. If you want to just talk about it from a pure football perspective, off-field stuff aside, he's got a chance to do some really explosive things and allow the Bengals then to maybe scheme more up for Jamar Chase for more explosive things.
Well, I hope that's the case, because my only issue with this is if he feels like he doesn't have off-the-field concerns, then he shouldn't have slipped. Like his on-the-field ability should have been enough to make him a higher round draft pick. That's my only concern. It's like, no, you had off-the-field concerns. That's why you slipped. I hope you are actually way more talented than where you were drafted. Well, I hope you're way better than your off-the-field issue.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just going to take Zach Taylor's word here when he said they thoroughly vetted him. They looked him in the eye. They talked to him. They discussed things with him. He answered it. And that, to me, says a lot. I mean,
and I feel good about that.
And this is a team, as we know, they don't do a whole lot of character issue guys with character issue problems. And maybe this is them just selling their soul out and going, you know what? Yeah, this guy from Red Flags, man, we need to win now. And let's go get the best guy on the board at that point. Maybe that was the case, and his line is nothing but BS. And it could very well be. I don't take coaches at their word all the time, but you did say it. So now if something happens, it does fall back to you saying you thoroughly vetted this kid.
Right. And I'm good with that. And I agree with the point that, look, Zach Taylor has actually fixed this locker room. I think they have a bunch of good guys, winners, a great locker room that does good stuff in the community. And I think this will be a great spot for Jermaine Burton, quite honestly. Now, here's the football side of it. You mentioned that he has the ability. We're talking about a lot about him fitting in as the slot receiver, replacing Tyler Boyd. But you mentioned his ability to be versatile, to go out, play on the outside, make big plays down the field as well. Do you see this as potentially you take a bigger swing here on a quote-unquote slot guy because maybe he's your T. Higgins replacement a year from now if he really blossoms?
Yeah, I think he absolutely is. I think it gives you a chance to continue to develop Charlie Jones, who again, Charlie Jones could come into camp for all I know and win the slot job. And Jermaine Burton's, getting snaps to give Jamar Chase a blow and T. Higgins a blow and Charlie Jones a blow. I don't know how this is all going to play out, but I think that's absolutely the case. That this is step one towards the replacement for T. Higgins. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, well, guess what? You got another draft next year, and we've seen it. I mean, Jamar Chase was easily a plug-and-play guy, right? I mean, first round, 5th overall, you expect that guy to plug and play. Well, T. Higgins was too. I mean, and he was a second-round pick, and we're seeing that more and more in this league. You're getting all the way down to some third-round receivers now that are plug-and-play guys, and that's a position that seems like you can do that very quickly. So even if Burton doesn't work out right away, I still think you can rectify it moving forward, and I think it's going to work out. I will say, I wrote another story about him yesterday about the red flags and all those things and what he can mean to the offense. I just did a profile on him over the weekend and just a brief draft grade. So I expanded it into a story yesterday, and I dug up something from his NFL.com scouting profile that I guess I overlooked. And it said, big play receiver, averages a touchdown every 5.7 receptions, and would have had more if passing was more accurate when his windows of being open were there, or something along those lines. It was basically an indictment on Jaden Milroe, who did come on as the season went along. It was not an indictment, I don't think, on Bryce Young the year before. I think it was on Milroe this year, saying, hey, this guy's getting open. They're just not hitting him.
Which is true, by the way. Milroe was a disaster early in the season. He did get a lot better, but he was all over the place with his accuracy and just seeing things. And I believe that fully. So
and now listen, feel good. Now the guy throwing to those open windows is one Joe Burrow. Who do you think?
Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah, he's okay.
Yeah. Skinny, you guys have had some other write-ups come out since the draft ended. You've looked into extra things like you just pointed out there, something you may have missed. Were there any other interesting nuggets that have come out since the draft ended and since we last talked?
Not to my knowledge. We talked a little bit about the undrafted guys that they have not officially signed yet. We won't get those till next week. Rookie mini camp is actually a week from. We're doing this on a Thursday, a week from tomorrow. It's May the 10th and 11th, I believe. I think we have access on Friday, May 10th for that. So I'm super interested to meet the safety from Georgia who started his career at Shepherd. I just think that story, starting at a Division II school, walking on at Liberty. And Liberty's got a nice football program, but to go from Division II to not even getting a scholarship at Liberty to then starting in the SEC tells me this dude is just ascending, and you may have just stolen an athlete. And maybe it's just a special teams athlete, but hey, with the new kickoff coverage or kickoff rules, you're going to need all the special teams guys you can get. And maybe this guy adds to that mix. I just think his story is super interesting. That's
the thing. If he can find a way to make it work, the story that's going to come with it, he's going to grab some headlines for sure as the season goes on.
Yeah. The other one, and I didn't bring this up on Sunday, and I guess I should have. Josh Newton, the cornerback from TCU.
I like this guy.
Well, I don't know. I think a couple of guys on the beat tweeted it out. I didn't. Maybe I should have. But I didn't watch The Wire much, but you remember, did you watch The Wire?
Yes.
Remember the guy that always would say, shit?
Yes.
I think he dropped 20 of those in talking. Every answer was blank. At one point he was blank. These kids out here playing tag while I'm talking.
That's incredible. He sounds like a different cat. Did you hear that speech he gave to like his teammates inside the film room at TCU?
I did not.
It was pretty impressive. I mean, he just seems like a football guy through and through, 100%, loves the sport, loves the game, relishes every chance he gets to continue playing. So I'm interested to see how he does as well. Skinny, here's kind of my final thought wrap up from the draft. I want to get your thought on it and then give me your wrap up, a one sentence wrap up here. My thought is this: the Bengals have to hit on Mims for this draft to be looked at favorably when people rehash it. But if they're able to hit on Mims and one of Burton or Eric All, the tight end from Iowa, then the Bengals brass is going to look brilliant for the way this draft turned out.
Agreed. Because I think both defensive tackles will be just fine. I think they'll be very solid contributors, with Jenkins having a chance to be potentially spectacular. So yeah, to your point, if you hit on both Burton and All, because I do think they drafted All more with an eye of the future of let's get us a 3-down tight end starting in 2025. Maybe he comes in and is the starting tight end this year for All. I don't think that's going to take place. I think you
just need one of the two. I think if Mims is good and one of those two big play, one's a receiver, one's a tight end, but one of those two guys actually hit on the potential you think they have, then this draft looks brilliant because both of those guys were kind of reach picks or unexpected picks.
No, correct. Agreed. I think it's a good point.
What would be your kind of takeaway? Do you have a final thought or wrap up from the draft? Anything?
Yeah, I thought they filled needs also with an eye on the future. And I think that's always important in my opinion. I wrote a story before the draft of how I thought before free agency, how I thought they were paying the price for the 2021 and 2022 drafts when they, took a swing for some offensive linemen in 2021 in Jackson Carman and Deontay Smith, and neither has panned out. I didn't need both of them to pan out, but I needed at least one of them to pan out, and that's why they had to dip again back into free agency, back into the draft to get another tackle, because neither one of those guys panned out. So to me, they filled needs with an eye on the future as well.
All right, one last Bengals topic to get to here that is not related to the draft. Do you have an issue with the Bengals keeping the B logo at midfield?
No, I don't. I like that. In fact, I saw the rendering of what the stadium surface is going to look like, and I think it's nice. It's clean. It's got a little bit of character to it, what they're doing in the end zone. So I like it.
So you're good with the B logo in general, then it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of like their original, the flying tiger with the helmet coming off. I think that would really look cool at midfield. But the branding right now, that's their logo, and I'm okay with that.
They're not going back to that old school tiger that you're talking about. People wanted the leaping tiger.
That's the one I'm talking about, with the one with his helmet's flying off.
No, you're talking about the old school one that's running, right? You're not talking about the one that's stretched out. People wanted the leaping tiger that stretched out like the 90s, the Corey Dillon logo, basically.
I'm okay with that one a little bit too.
It's I'm okay. I think it's better than the B for certain. The B, here's why the B sucks. Because people think that's about your city. Like, people look at that, it's like Boston, Buffalo, but like no one associates B with Cincinnati or the Bengals. You know what I mean? It's just not.
Well, yeah, I mean, but again, it's their logo, so you do associate it with them.
Well, like if you are a Bengals fan or an NFL fan, but like, have you ever seen those videos where they go around to random people asking them like, what NFL team is this? And then, they don't know. The Bengals is one that always gets wrong because people think it's Buffalo or it's Boston or it's a city with a B. But
here's the thing. If you're watching the game on television from Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati, Ohio, and you see the big B, you know what it stands for.
Sure. The midfield logo, I don't have as much of an. Oh, I think it's stupid. It doesn't look good. But the logo itself, I think, is just bad. It's a bad logo. You need to do something better. How long? By the way, it's been long enough. Can't we do some type of small rebrand here?
Maybe
develop another tiger logo. I mean, you have such a great mascot. How can you not include the tiger in your mascot?
Yeah, they tweaked the uniform design a little bit in 2021. So maybe to your point, maybe they do. You know what? Here's what they can do. They can do what UC did. And what you can do is you can hire a firm for $100,000 that turns a C and italicizes
it. So we could just get an italicized B at midfield.
Correct.
All right, that'll work for me. I wasn't too worked up over it, but I do think it is a dumb logo. The fans, I'm a little surprised how much people care about the logo at midfield. I got to be honest.
Fans care about that. They care about that. They care about uniform combinations. It makes me crazy.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears here to the Reds. They are 16-15 after losing a 3-game series in San Diego. They're now in third place in the NL Central, 3.5 games behind the first place Brewers. Skinny, I guess starting off, just how frustrating is this team at the plate right now when you have Martini, Espinal, Candelario, Fairchild, and Maile all hitting under 200?
Yeah, how about the lineup he had to put on the field on Wednesday with Martini batting 5th and Espinal batting 6th? It's like you're doomed. You're doomed for today. You're not scoring more than 2 runs, and guess how many runs they scored? 2. And I think right now they're between a rock and a hard. They're playing shorthanded. I don't understand why they consistently do that. It feels like there's always 2 guys who can't play on that day when you've only got 4 bench guys to begin with. It makes no sense to me. Maybe it's just continue to be patient. Some of these guys will turn around, get some of these guys healthy. TJ Friedel was just put on a rehab assignment today, right before we did this podcast. So that's a good sign moving forward, because it means it's not going to be too long till he's back atop that lineup. And I think that will make a huge, huge difference. But boy, it felt like everybody not named Ellie De La Cruz went into a slump all at the same time.
And it's almost been, aside from Steer's hot start and Cruz being good pretty much for the entirety of the season to this point, the rest of the team has been in a slump basically since it started. It feels like there's really been no other contributors, at least on any type of consistent basis. I mean, like you said, you're looking at this team and it's Fraley's sick, Friedel's hurt, McLean's hurt, Marte's doing gear cycles allegedly. Like that's what's frustrating about this, is if all those guys are available right now, or even 75% of them, this team feels completely different, because what you're getting right now out of the pitching, Nick Lodolo developing into, I don't know if I'm willing to go ace after 4 impressive starts, but building off of what we had already seen from him, we were already impressed by. He has this incredible layoff with all the injuries, and it feels like, is this guy ever going to be back pitching again consistently? And now three of his first four starts, I guess. Is that right? He's pitched four times now?
Yeah.
Three of the four have been outstanding. Monday night, he pitched 7 innings in a 5-2 win. He struck out 11, retired 18 straight at one point. 3 of the 4 starts so far, he's gone 5 2/3 innings and given up 1 or fewer runs. I mean, he's pitching lights out right now. And he's the only one pitching like that, but they've been getting some pretty good pitching on different nights from different guys. It just feels like the offense is nowhere to be found most of the time.
Yeah, they somehow still have managed to be the scored the 7th most runs in the National League, which I do think is a testament to the way they run the bases and steal bases, that they're creating runs, without hitting for the most part. A month is a pretty good sample size. I'll freak out more at the All-Star, at the Memorial Day break. Again, by then you get Friedel back, and let's see what this lineup does. Encarnacion strain injury too, coming off of what is a healed broken bone in his hand, and he's dealing with that. That's disappointing. And I just don't know what the answer is at the moment, other than just sit tight. Hopefully some of the guys who've hit before will hit. Some of the younger guys you were expecting to hit will hit. I mean, Christian Encarnacion strain has hit at every level along the way. He hit at times when he came up last year, even though he wasn't playing every day. I have faith in that guy. I get it's been a month. He's hitting under 200. He looks bad at times at the plate. And again, maybe it is the injury situation. Maybe that thing hasn't healed properly and is dealing with pain in it.
You have to think so, because if not, then it is getting to be a little bit concerning. But I tend to think it more has to do with the injury situation that he's been fighting through. We mentioned Nick Lodolo and how well he's been pitching. What's your confidence level in what we've seen from him, and how realistic this is that he'll continue doing it?
I think I said it last year. I think he had the makeup to be the staff ace, even when people were pointing at Hunter Green. I can remember sitting in Columbia, South Carolina, the weekend we went to the Masters last year and watching his start against Philadelphia. And I went, that guy is just ridiculous. The college time, I think, helped him probably be ready a little bit further along. He's a strikeout pitcher, but he paints corners. He's got that big breaking ball that he buries against right-handed hitters on their foot. And he's a tough guy to hit. And, the only thing for him is stay healthy. And if he stays healthy, I think this is an all-star caliber pitcher for many years to come.
Skinny, do you believe Elly De La Cruz threw that ball 106.9 miles per hour across the infield the other night?
So I actually, I didn't see yesterday's game, the Wednesday game, but that game I saw. I was up in Dayton doing public address for a couple of high school games and got home about the 3rd or 4th inning. So I watched the rest of it. And I actually yelled at the TV when he threw it. It's like, why did you wind up and throw that so daggone hard? That was just stupid in my opinion. But yes, I can believe he threw it that hard, because that thing, no offense, we can all poke fun at Jeimer Candelario and why he's not hitting all those things. And hey, he's a professional first baseman. I think he was so shocked by the speed of it that he couldn't even get an eyeball on it.
I'm telling you, Skinny, this is I don't know why people are so shocked that he could possibly throw this ball 107 miles an hour. We have pitchers who on a mound are able to throw 104, 105 miles an hour fairly regularly. The idea that the biggest freak in the sport is able to take a crow hop and fire a ball another mile or 2 per hour faster across the infield, not that surprising to me. And especially when you saw the way that throw looked. I mean, look at it from the one angle where it's coming in from like behind this angle right here. He doesn't even have a chance to get his glove up to catch this. I mean, look at that. He has no chance to catch that.
Yeah, and like I said, I know people are going to say, well, that's a major league first baseman. He should. No, he shouldn't. That thing was impossible to catch because it's also rising.
The reaction time is insane.
Elly needed to make that throw, to be honest with you, though.
I don't think he did either. I'm not sure if, maybe that's one of those things where like you don't even realize your own strength. To some extent, it's like he doesn't even realize he's throwing the ball 107 miles an hour when he winds up. He's just trying to make a bang play late in the game and win it. But I mean, it's shocking to see something like that. Like you said, I'm kind of frustrated in the moment. But then we have the next day the whole social media fallout, which is always interesting to see. And the big argument seems to be whether it's real or whether it's a misprint on the 106.9. It's like I don't have a hard time believing that at all.
I don't either. I don't either.
It probably was 107 miles an hour.
I would agree with you. Yeah, I know that was the big discussion, but I would agree with you. I think it was too. By the way, so my boss at Local 12, he likes to do these Elly stories because it seems like he does something daily where he's the first guy to do this, and this, and they do well on our website, so they make a lot of sense. So I sent him. He said, I'm doing an Elly story today. So I decided to crunch numbers of what Elly was on pace for, and a month in is a decent enough sample size to start talking on pace. Maybe not a week. But he was on pace as of going into yesterday for 45 homers, 109 RBI, 100 stolen bases on the nose, and 145 runs scored. Is that any good?
Decent, I think.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty absurd at this point, what he's been doing and what he's on pace for. Now, obviously, we've got a long way to go in terms of these projected numbers, but it's still insane to think about. Here's the other thing I wanted to get to from the Red side of things. This was the David Bell ejection from, I guess it was Tuesday night.
Tuesday night, yeah.
What did you think of the David Bell ejection here, especially the kick here of the batting donut, Skinny?
I think this was as much that was releasing a little bit of the tension of the moment for him probably, and maybe trying to get some things fired up, because I'm sure it is frustrating on a daily basis, putting names on the lineup card that you have to put in there, knowing they can't produce, and then the guys who are supposed to produce not producing. There's going to be a sense of frustration at some point. You don't want to take it out on your players, so take it out on the umpire and take it out on the donuts. Well,
the other thing I really liked about this was he gets ejected after his pitcher that he's arguing in favor of got a strikeout. Like, right. The at-bat that he was pissed off about, they got a strikeout. He was arguing about 3 balls that were called during the at-bat that he felt were strikes, or at least 2 of the 3 were strikes. And then they got out of the inning unharmed too. And he was still pissed off enough to go out and get ejected in between innings after the inning was over and they had already gotten out of it. I love that move, because that's like where you're arguing from a point of, I'm not being crazy right now. We're good. We came out fine. It's not like I'm just pissed off because you screwed us over and we gave up a couple runs. I'm pissed off because you suck at your job. Like, we got out of it still, but you suck.
Yeah, there's that part of it too. And that seems to be a prevailing theme this year among managers and umpires, the clashes that they're having. But I also think that was a little bit of frustration and a little bit aimed at trying to get your guys, maybe pumped up a little bit, because it just feels like you're kind of in this, you just can't get out of your own rut at the moment at the plate.
Now, what grade do you give him on the tantrum there of kicking the donut? That's
about a C-.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a bad play. Kicking stuff is always a bad play, because one, especially as a guy at that age, like right now, if I go to kick something, it's probably the most unathletic I can look. It's just not a natural motion. I don't kick things. My coordination isn't there. Like, going to kick something isn't going to look very impressive. Not to mention, you're kicking a weighted rock essentially in a donut like that. You might break your toe, man. Like, that's not good. I think throwing a bucket of balls is always the best tantrum.
It's a good one. That's a good tantrum.
There's no chance of you getting hurt, and then someone else has to go pick it up after you go into the dugout.
So I got in a wormhole of ejections on YouTube the other day. I think it was after the Aaron Boone crazy ejection, the day he got ejected when he didn't say anything and the fan did. I forgot about – remember the AAA manager or the minor league manager who was doing the army crawl and took the rosin bag and threw it like he was throwing a grenade? I forgot how funny that ejection was.
Yeah. I mean, that was a bit over the top, but that
way over the top.
That guy committed to the bit and wouldn't stop, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, by the way, to your point of being angry, I think the last time I took a full fist and punched a board as a coach, I regret it because I thought I broke my hand. I didn't. It just stung. So I've taken to, when I'm angry, I will hit the whiteboard with my open hand, but I won't slap it as hard as I can. I had an assistant coach friend of mine that busted up his knuckles this past year when he fully punched it. He's like, yeah, I forgot that thing's attached to a wall. And you just sometimes forget that. To your point about kicking stuff, that's never a good idea, because you just don't know how dense that thing is and what damage it could do to you. And so I've gotten away from that. I can throw some tantrums, as you may know, with the best of them, but I've kind of got to the point of, I'm going to throw this tantrum, but I'm not going to hurt myself doing that.
Well, you also admitted last year on this podcast, actually during this past basketball season, that you threw a shoe at one point during one of your basketball practices.
That. Yep, I've done that.
Yeah.
I threw my own shoe.
I actually think to me, it's always, I have 2 go-tos. It's throwing something is always the best option, because you're not going to get hurt if you do that. And it's usually it can be funny. It can kind of diffuse the situation a little bit. But if not, the next best option is to punch or hit something that's going to move. Like a trash can is always good. It falls over. It sends things going everywhere. You look real pissed off. It's impressive to do. You don't want to
I have kicked the plastic trash can before.
Yeah, it's a great move. That's always a good one. Papers go flying out. And it's like, that guy's really pissed off,
My worst one, I came in, I had my backpack after a game. We blew like a 9-point lead in the last 2 minutes. And it was a good point in the season, because we actually turned it around right after that. So I came in and I threw my bag. And when I did, I tried to throw it like the players were sitting here. I tried to throw it over this way, and it slipped out of my hands. Just barely missed the top of a kid's head. And all my stuff went flying out. The kid started getting, I go, leave it. I'll get it. So
you almost got a lawsuit right there, brother.
Yes, I did. And I kind of learned that, okay, we're not going to throw anything towards anybody. If you throw it, throw it. Like the shoe, I threw it away from everybody.
Yeah, I should be more clear about that. Do not throw objects at people when you're throwing it. Throw it against a wall or something out into the open. All right, let's get to college basketball here, Skinny. The transfer portal came to a close on Wednesday night at midnight. Now, what that means is players can no longer enter the transfer portal. They had to have submitted the paperwork to be in. There may be a few names that still trickle in over the next 24, 48 hours as the paperwork gets filed, but they had to at least submit the paperwork by Wednesday night. Now, there will still be guys, if you're in the portal already, and there are still tons of players in the portal that have not committed anywhere, they still will find somewhere to go. They don't have to be committed by Wednesday. So that's where things stand. Kentucky's roster is not done yet, but there has been major progress made by Mark Pope and his staff. He's gotten that staff mostly in place now, and they have landed 7 incoming transfers. Drexel big man Amari Williams was the first of them. Then they added San Diego State point guard Lamont Butler. Then Oklahoma wing Otiga Owe, Wake Forest stretch forward Andrew Carr, Oklahoma State center Brandon Garrison, West Virginia guard Kerr Kriisa, and Dayton wing Kobe Brea. So those are the 7 names that Kentucky has added.
Did you say the San Diego State kid?
Yeah, Lamont Butler. He was the second.
Got it. Did I miss the Oklahoma kid? I thought they had 8.
Oklahoma, Otiga Owe. That's
okay. Maybe
I had. I might have missed one. Now they do have Colin Chandler, who was a 4-star prospect in 2022 for BYU. Committed there, went on a Mormon mission for the last 2 years, and now he's going to be at UK this year as a freshman. They also have Travis Perry, the 4-star guard from Lyon County, who won the Kentucky State Championship. He'll be a freshman this year as well. So there are, I guess, 9 guys total on the roster. I think. Is there anyone coming back from last year?
No, not at this point. I mean, I know Thiero had left it open. I know he's trying to get another one of his guys from BYU who was a 6-man last year, whose name is escaping me at the moment. And I did hear him say on an interview on Kentucky Sports Radio on Monday, I guess it was, Mark Pope. He was asked, will you use all 13 scholarships? And he said, I'm not sure. I want these guys to all be a fit. And I would say this, if you become the 12th or 13th guy coming to the roster, most of these guys transferring want to get NIL, number one, but they also want to have a chance to play. Pretty good chance if you're that guy, you're probably not on a high list of guys who are going to play. So I would say if he adds maybe 2 more guys, that's probably a pretty good place with 11 guys. Maybe a 12th as a walk-on, and then you're set.
I think you try to get to about 9 to 10 real players, and then you have like maybe a developmental guy or maybe the Kentucky kid who's happy to be there, your Dominique Hawkins type addition. If you have an option like that, you can fill a spot with that. But then I think in this day and age, you want to keep at least 1 roster spot open, 1 scholarship open, just in case a mid-season transfer comes up or what have you. It's nice to have a spot because, like you said, the 12th and 13th guy, they're never seeing the floor. They're never going to be happy about how much NIL money they're getting, what have you. So it's not a real scholarship position, in my opinion. It's so hard to try to put this team together or think about what they're going to be, how they stack up in the SEC. But just based on what you know and what you've seen here, Skinny, what are kind of your overall thoughts on the roster Pope is putting together?
I think he A, has gotten good players, and B, he's had a method to the madness of the roster building. It sounded like he wanted to get his bigs first, and maybe it was easier to get the bigs first. I don't know. Butler, he got himself a lockdown defender, and what was one of their weaknesses last year was the defensive end of the floor. Kerr Kriisa, I don't think he had a great year at West Virginia, but he's got a proven background from his days as a point guard at Arizona, and that West Virginia team was just bad in general. And so but you got your point guard now. The kid from Dayton is a sniper, so you got a sniper as a shooter. I think he's done a nice job building the roster with the parts that can mesh together.
I'll say this. I'm concerned about the point guard position. They need a real ball handler. I think Kerr Kriisa, to me, that take signified a little bit of panic because Kerr Kriisa was a guy that most of the coaches that were involved with him the last 2 years, both when he went to West Virginia and now this time when he re-entered the portal, most of the coaches were kind of like looking into it and then going, I think we're good. I think we can do better. He's kind of a tough guy to win with. He's very limited in what he does well. Now, he does shoot the ball well, and that fits BYU wants shooters.
Here's my question. Does that offensive system really need a true point guard? Because it really is give it up and everybody's moving. It's not like you're creating from the point guard position a lot of times.
And perhaps that's a fair argument that in Mark Pope's system, that's why he values Kerr Kriisa more than some other coaches might. And I do think Kerr Kriisa has some value, certainly in Pope's system. But if I'm Kentucky, and I want to compete at the level Kentucky expects to, I would like to have another big-time ball hand. Now, Lamont Butler is a legit guard, too, in there, so it's not like they don't have guards, but I would like another playmaker on the offensive side of things if they can add one. Now, it's getting pretty late in the game here. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of big additions still made. I know one of the guys is the kid from BYU's in the NBA draft that they're hoping to get back. He's like a 6'8", 6'9" kid, I think. But yeah, I think mostly it's going to be a little bit different with Mark Pope, because I do think there is going to be more of an emphasis on finding guys that fit the way he plays and his system. And so it's hard to really judge this year's haul on that. One, because they just got there. It's hard to put a team together this quickly. But two, because it may not look the same way as it used to under John Calipari. He may not always have the highest level of talent like Calipari did when he's trying to find the right shooters and what have you that fit his style of play. So I am interested to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, and also moving forward, this staff will get a chance to recruit a couple of freshmen each year that are probably developmental guys, that at least will be on the roster as a starting point. I mean, they literally started from scratch with this roster, other than basically Travis Perry, who's a Kentucky kid, Mr. Kentucky. And I'm interested to see what he's like, because, Reed Sheppard was a pretty high-level recruit. I don't know if Travis Perry was, but boy, Travis Perry just had a decorated high school career, shoots the daylights out of it, and carried his high school team a damn long way.
Dude scored like 5,000 points, didn't he, in his high school career? I mean,
crazy.
Did he set the new Kentucky State scoring record?
Yeah. King Kelly Coleman was the old record holder. Had I think he was 4,600 something or other. He broke it in the regular season back in December.
That's insane, though. That was a record that a lot of people thought would never be broken. It was almost impossible to get to. What this kid did in high school is unbelievable. And I tell you what, he's a much better fit for Mark Pope than he is for John Calipari.
Fair point.
So he might really find a role there at Kentucky and get to live out his dream. You mentioned Mark Pope going on KSR on Monday, I believe that was. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that interview, because he's goofy, but he's authentic, and he doesn't give you scripted answers. That's the one thing that comes across as kind of refreshing, is he is like speaking off the top clearly.
Yeah, I do think it's refreshing. I do like it. I always just felt like we were getting a used car salesman, and after a while, that speech gets old. It certainly was great early on for fans. They bought into it hook, line, and sinker. To the dude's credit, he delivered for a period of time, but then when it stopped delivering, the message got really old and stale. And so I think this is, listen, and John could have great success at Arkansas. We'll find out. But for those that I've heard the argument about Mark Pope of, well, is he going to be able to get these great young players? I think to your point, I think he's more getting guys for his system. And what has the great young players done the last few years for this program? Right?
I loved his answer about that too. Matt Jones asked him specifically, do you plan on recruiting top 10, top 15 type 5-star prospects still? And he said, yeah, this is Kentucky. This is always going to be the place where the top prospects in the world want to come play. He's like, but we also have other considerations. But yeah, absolutely, we're going to continue to recruit those types of guys. So I don't think it's like they have any intention of going away from trying to get the best talent. But I do think they may be a little bit more thoughtful, aside from just we're going to stack 6 5-stars because we can, as opposed to we got 2 5-stars that fit what we want to do. And then we're going to get this guy ranked 75th because he's a lights out 6'7" face up guy at the 4 spot that we love. I think you may see a little bit more of that with Mark Pope.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, just wrapping up kind of the rest of the area with the transfer portal. Again, it's not finalized yet, but I think with Xavier, they added Long Beach State big man Lassina Traore over the weekend. Clear cut, just rebounder. That's what he does. That's what they were looking for here. He's a dominant rebounder, led the Big West in rebounding percentage, both offensive and defensive, each of the last 2 seasons, averaged a double-double. That's why they're bringing him in. And I think at this point, Xavier is mostly done with what they're going to do in the transfer portal. They might still add a guy or two, but I don't think it's going to be a main contributor type piece. Skinny, are you okay with Xavier's front court coming out of last year?
Yeah, it's because it's going to be better. I mean, it's going to be better by light leap years, and I'm not even counting Fremantle and Jerome Hunter into the mix of that, if that's possible. So yeah, I do. It's going to be clearly better, and then you add those guys if you can into the mix, and suddenly you are legit up front.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're not even counting them in and you feel better about it, then you have to feel immensely better, because those two are the main guys on the front court still, I think. And maybe you can't count Jerome Hunter, but at least Zach Fremantle, to me, looking at what Xavier's done this transfer portal, they clearly think Zach Fremantle is going to be a big contributor this year, I would think, based on.
So they added 7?
Xavier's added, that would be 5.
5. It's to go along with Fremantle, Hunter, the kid from Centerville, and who else?
Well, you want the whole roster here? We can go through the whole roster.
Yeah, I don't need the walk-ons.
Yeah, so basically what you have is Jerome Hunter, Zach Fremantle, Davion McKnight.
Oh, I forgot about him.
Is returning. Trey Green is returning as a freshman from last year. And then Dalen Swain is returning as a freshman from last year. That's
a better roster.
Yeah, the new additions are Marcus Foster, the wing transfer from Furman, Dante Maddox Jr., the guard transfer from Toledo, John Hughley, the big man transfer from Oklahoma, Ryan Conwell, the guard transfer from Indiana State, and then we mentioned Jonathan Powell, who'll be the incoming freshman from Centerville, and also Lucina Traore, who I mentioned, the big man from Long Beach State that they just added over this past weekend. So those are their 11 players on the roster right now. Like I said, they could add maybe another body, but I don't think it'll be a starter or a big-time contributor. Then with Cincinnati, we've talked about them. They've added Connor Hickman and Arrington Page so far this offseason, another shooter on the wing, and a big man who would, to me, feel more like a kind of a role big man, a rotational piece in the front court to go behind Assis Bandego. Kind of your overall thoughts on UC there, Skinny?
I think they need more dudes who are dudes, and I don't know if those dudes are out there. I mean, this almost feels like the roster of last year running it back, and I don't know how that's – I mean, that's an okay roster. It proved itself that it could compete in the Big 12, but is it good enough to win at the level you need to get in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I feel like they're clearly banking on Jizzle James becoming a star for them next year.
And he certainly can.
So then it becomes Jizzle James and Dan Skilling's team, I think, next year. The question is there enough? I mean, I guess now you Seamoss and Connor Hickman, you've got some skill going there, but playing both of those guys hurt your athleticism too much, because last year a big thing was your athleticism and your defense. So
and is Page a more well-rounded center than Aziz? And does Aziz become the backup rotational piece, or are we in the same boat we were last year, where you got one guy on the offensive end, one guy on the defensive end?
Well, my concern this year is you don't have anyone on the offensive end, because I don't think either one of those guys are really scorers or offensively skilled guys from the front court perspective. So, yeah, I don't love their front court right now. I would like to see them do more there, but it's getting kind of late in the transfer portal. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to add another contributor or not. And then with NKU, we talked about they've added a couple of guys already. We talked last week about the incoming freshman, Paulius Rapolis, the big man who's coming in. And then just this past week, they added another incoming transfer, a Division II shooter, Josh Dilling, who shot over 46% from three-point range last year. I think this is kind of it worked for Oakland with Jack Golke. Might as well go find our guy, right?
Yeah, I saw the school he came from. What was it? I don't know if I've even heard of it before. What was this? Michigan Tech?
No, the point guard Dan Gresger was from Michigan Tech.
That's a Michigan Tech guy. Okay.
Yeah, Josh Dilling. Let's see, from Northern State is where he came from.
Yeah. So what is it? Northern in part of a state, or where is Northern State's location? Do we know?
It is Northern, and it is a state. He's from Wisconsin.
So maybe it's a Wisconsin school.
I'm guessing Northern State. Let's Google it real quick.
Yeah, please. I don't mean to put you on the spot on the podcast, but I did see
that.
I
find out.
Yeah.
South Dakota, Aberdeen, South Dakota.
Gotcha. Nothing you can do in South Dakota other than shoot the basketball, man. There you go. You got yourself a shooter. I do think it is funny because it feels like a dead parallel to Golke, does it not?
But I love that idea. Like,
I do
we've
too.
been talking about this with the way COVID and all this recruiting stuff has gone in the transfer portal, and D1 schools not focusing as much on high school recruiting. There have definitely been guys who have been slipping through the cracks. And if you find a guy who's like super skilled, fits what you need, NKU needed to add more shooting. And with their system that they've gone to, where they're playing more up tempo, they're trying to get quicker shots in transition and trying to hoist those threes up. He fits what they wanted to add anyway. So, I mean, they don't need him to contribute and play 30 minutes a game next year. Anything he gives you is going to help. But if he does end up being a Jack Golke-like guy who can give you 5 or 6 3-point attempts per game and make them at a 40% plus clip, you've really got something there.
Yeah, I hope next March we're talking about NKU going to the NCAA tournament, and I'm talking about this kid having hoisted only 6 2-pointers all year long.
That would be incredible. Josh Dilling. I don't think you're going to get the ridiculousness like you would from Greg Campy's system, where he'll have a player not take any 2-pointers. But I would love it if they had a real sharpshooter like that. Any other thoughts on the transfer portal? Any of the college basketball teams, Skinny?
No, I would guess for coaches, there's at least now there's some stability of no other guys hopping in, but there's still work to be done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They're still working, trying to get some of these last-minute guys. And then the other part of it, the AAU stuff just started up last weekend. In a couple of weeks, they're going to be back on the road going to some of these AAU tournaments. So now it becomes more of the preps thing. But again, that is much lower pressure now than it used to be because of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get some Ask Skinny Anything to wrap this show up. Skinny, you are now a college basketball coach at one of the local schools. Your entire team consists of clones of one player currently on that team. Who are you picking?
Wow.
You got to pick the school and the player, I guess, here. That's really just picking the player.
Yeah. Man, oh, man. That's a great one. I mean, do we include guys that came in the portal?
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
I'm going to take the Carr kid at Kentucky because he's a stretch 4, and I also get some size with him.
Okay.
Believe it or not, who I was really thinking of, because I think it would be interesting. You wouldn't be very big, but you'd be semi-functional athletically, and the upside there is Dan Skillings.
That's one I was thinking of. My concern there is ball handling. Seems like he gets himself into some trouble.
Well, again, if we're going to clone these guys, we're going to give up something along. Like Carr, who's going to be my point guard? Is Carr going to be my point guard? Am I going to have 5, 6, 11 guys, and one of them's the point guard?
Yes, that's how it has to work. That's why you got. I'll tell you what. Here he's coming off an injury, but here's a sneaky pick. Sam Vincent.
It's a good one.
He can do everything. He can rebound, he can defend, he can handle the ball, he can shoot the 3. He's 6'4", 6'5", athletic and tough.
Problem is I got 5 dudes coming off knee surgery.
That is the problem. That is an issue. If it's healthy Sam Vincent, that's not a bad pick.
I love that question, though. It is a great question.
That's an interesting one. Okay, let's go for each team, though. Who would you pick off of UC, Dan Skillings? Who would you pick off of Xavier if you had to do it?
That's a good one. Probably the kid from Furman.
I was thinking maybe Indiana State, Ryan Conwell.
You have a bunch of shooters. Are you going to grab a rebound?
Well, the Furman kid can do that. You bring up a good point. He's an elite defensive rebounder. I'll tell you what, Conwell was not a bad rebounder at the guard position, though. I think he averaged like 5 rebounds there. So he's 6'4", not a bad athlete.
If I'm playing with 5, 6'4s against my 5, 6, 11 cars, you're going to be in trouble.
That's going to be tough. But, I mean, that's going to be a shootout to begin with. Both teams are shooting a lot.
I mean, as goofy as it sounds, as much as, again, I think UC needs to have a better overall roster. The Dan Skillings pick, just because he can do a little bit of everything, really.
I think he's by far, out of the names we're talking about right now, he's by far the hardest one-on-one to guard. Like, you're not stopping. Like, he's scoring a ton. His team is scoring a ton with 5 of him on the floor.
And you got functional length.
Yeah, 6'7". You can rebound the hell out of it. He became a great rebounder last year. That's an interesting question. All right, here's the one I really wanted to get to, Skinny.
Okay.
Dave & Buster's, I don't know if you saw this. Dave & Buster's is going to introduce gambling. They are set to allow adults 18 and older to place real-time bets with friends on arcade games. Is this a great move by Dave & Buster's, or is it the best move of all time by any restaurant in history?
It's a great move. I mean, listen, they're capitalizing on the gambling craze. I don't think you're going to go too crazy because you're doing it, among your group or among friends or whatever. I mean, I guess in theory, you maybe have done that before anyway. Like, did you ever play that boxing game with Glass Joe?
Oh, yeah, Punch-Out. Yeah.
Yeah. Body blow, knockout.
You used to bet on Punch-Out?
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So I heard people used to run like $1 a point on skee ball.
Oh, that's a good one.
Degenerate friends used to sell. I mean, that could get out of hand quickly. You could get very out of hand by several hundred points.
But Dave & Buster's is just capitalizing on it. You're going to get a percentage of the cut. So, why not take advantage of maybe what people were doing in your establishment anyway?
So here's the thing that I need, right? Like, I understand the concept of you and I are going to play Pop-A-Shot. We get to bet who's going to win, and I take money. What I need, though, is if I'm walking by with my beverage in hand and we happen to see, like, this kid that's about to go up and shoot, can me and you now put, like, over 20.5 on that kid? Like, I'm going to go over, you're going to go under 20.5 on that kid's point total, and we'll bet on that. Because if that happens, I might never leave a Dave & Buster's. I can bet on random people playing Pop-Shot all day.
I think that's part of the plan, if I'm not mistaken, stuff like that.
That would be incredible. But also, you said you don't think this will get out of hand. I mean, there's alcohol at Dave & Buster's, and now there's going to be gambling involved. I cannot imagine adult men standing behind a couple like 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds who are missing Papa shots, costing them money, and where it goes from there. We can have some real issues.
You just need to make one more.
I mean, can you imagine the lawsuits that could come out from this? By the way, don't listen to this podcast, Dave and Buster, because I think it's a great idea. I want it to happen. Don't get me started.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. All right. Rank the careers of the following people, Skinny. There's only 5 of them, so hopefully we can do this on the fly. Bodie Miller, Phoebe Cates, Brian Bosworth, Jaleel White, and Tawny Katane.
Ooh. Number 5 would be, unfortunately, Phoebe Cates. She has the iconic scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but really didn't do much after that.
Fell off.
What's that?
Fell off hard. Phoebe Cates was nothing for me.
It's a great scene. Number 4 is Tawny Katane, because, I mean, really, her career consisted of that movie with Tom Hanks and then her dancing in Whitesnake videos, smoking hot, and then she turned into a nut job when she married Chuck Finley, and it's no longer with us, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. When I Googled her name to see who that was when I got asked, and she's dead. That's the first thing that came up.
All right, so we down to Bodie Miller, Jaleel White, and who else?
Brian Bosworth.
I'll put Bosworth. No, I'll tell you what. I'll put Bodie Miller third, Bosworth second, because Bosworth.
Did Bodie Miller win a gold or a silver?
I can't remember his name. I know who he is, but the name, that's part of it to me. You got to have some name recognition too. If you went down to Fountain Square and said, "Do you know who Brian Bosworth is?" more people would know his name than Bodie Miller's name, in my opinion.
No doubt. But he did win a gold medal. I'll give him that.
All right.
So I thought he was not even a gold medalist.
He's still third for me. Bosworth is second because he has really resurrected his career in those Dr. Pepper commercials. I think he's fabulous in them.
Bosworth is back, man. He's made a comeback. And the fact that he is still relevant at all in 2024 is really pretty crazy to think of.
It is. I may actually put him number 1 because he had relevance in college. He didn't have a great NFL career, but he did have an NFL career, and then he's had a second act here.
He's not better than Urkel.
A third act.
He's not better than Urkel, man.
Yeah, Urkel is very iconic.
Yeah. Or Jaleel White.
What else has Jaleel White done after being Urkel?
It doesn't matter. Urkel's better than anything listed here.
That's fair. I mean, I had him up there for a second, and then I wanted to put Bosworth just because Bosworth has had this relevance over. I mean, how long is that Dr. Pepper commercial going on? Like 5 years? 6 years, maybe? The
problem is how many people know that he's part of it or what he is, or that, like, you know what I mean? Like, to a lot of people, he's probably just the actor from the Dr. Pepper commercial.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
But how many people who are below 25 years old know who Urkel is?
Fair point. Also a fair point. That's a tough list to rank these people who are from completely different walks of life.
Correct. I love it. I love that. You know me. I love these kind of questions.
This one didn't even come from Mo, believe it or not.
Wow. I love that. I'm sorry for Phoebe Cates, because who just didn't love that scene?
It's a great scene. If there was any Cincinnati sports figure, this is the last one. If there's any Cincinnati sports figure whose career you could rewrite, who would you choose?
That's a good one. Honestly, Ken Griffey Jr., because it just didn't pan out like it was supposed to. And the injuries are what robbed him. I mean, that's what robbed him of it. And I mean, honestly, if he stays healthy, maybe he hits 780 home runs,
there's 2 that come to mind immediately, and that's the one I would choose, because there is a very reasonable universe in which Ken Griffey Jr. is so far and away the most beloved Cincinnati athlete of all time and is so immensely popular here. If he had not had the injuries that he had, I mean, he decided to come back to Cincinnati, play for this team when he was at the height of his powers. I mean, he was the biggest star in baseball, and then it just never worked out after he came. I mean, definitely had some good times here,
sure,
but it was nothing like the best player in baseball. It's not like getting Ken Griffey Jr. the way we thought it would be. Had that changed, I mean, I really think his life and the way Reds fans feel about the organization, everything is pretty different right now, to be quite honest. It stinks. The other one, and maybe this is a little too dark, Chris Henry.
Yeah, I thought of that one too. I mean, I I thought of him and Ickey Woods. I mean, Ickey Woods I think was going to be the best back in the NFL for a long, long time. And obviously injuries robbed him of that. He somehow kept his stardom thanks to the shuffle and all those things, but those are two good ones.
Yeah. All right. That's all I got.
All right. Good stuff. Thanks for the questions. Appreciate it. We will be back next week and continue along the progress of this podcast as we matriculate in through the season and head towards vacation time. When are you taking vacation time this summer, Rick? Are you?
I don't know. We've got a kid now. I don't think this is a vacation year for us, probably. I think we got a couple weddings that might be the deal.
That's vacation-y enough, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be back next week. For Rick Broering, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition presented by Blake the Attorney Maislin.
You can always get local stories right here on YouTube, but go ahead and hit that subscribe button to get notifications to stay in the know.